want to welcome everyone. So everyone already heard this bill, but everyone that's new to that just joined us. Today, our first speaker is Edna Keep, multifamily real estate expert, has done over 512, owns 512 doors, $61 million. She's going to talk about how to bypass single family and go straight to multifamily when it makes sense. So you're going to get some great information from Edna for 30 minutes. All good. How you doing? Well, I want to welcome Edna Keep to the High Performance Summer. I was just telling everyone how great your presentation is going to be. And has owned over 512 doors, valued at 61 million in multifamily, and how you're going to show people how to bypass single family and go straight to multifamily when it makes sense.
Yes.
So I'll let you take it away, Edna, but welcome to the High Performance Summit.
Thank you so much, Jason. My pleasure to be here. So I'll just give a little bit of my background and why I think that, this could definitely be an opportunity for you. So I started in real estate back in 2007. And like most people, we took some training classes. We weren't really sure what we wanted to do, if we wanted to be the money partner, the active partner, that sort of thing. But when we ended up owning 50 doors after 18 months, we knew we had something and we definitely wanted to expand on it. I sold my financial planning practice, went into real estate and have never looked back. We absolutely love what we do. And people ask me all the time, well, Edna, if you were to start over, what would you do differently? And I said, I think the only thing we do differently is go straight into multifamily. You know, the ease of financing, the ease of managing, 12, 14, 24 doors under one roof is so much easier than, having properties all over the city and dealing with, 24 roofs and 24 toilets and 24, well, I guess you still have the same amount of toilets, 24 furnaces, that sort of thing. And, people just started asking me, how did you do that? And, at first I was kind of thinking, well, my background as a financial advisor really helped a lot, being able to talk to investors, understand what investors are looking for. But then I also learned that, thought I had learned everything myself to become a financial advisor, and that I could teach that as well. And that's how we ended up getting into the coaching business, and also more and more multifamily as time went on. I find that investors like the idea of multifamily. And when I say multifamily, I'm talking 5 units and above, because it's financed as a commercial building and not as a house. Most people start with single family homes because that's what they know. They've already bought their own home. They understand the nuances that have to happen. You put a property under contract, you get financing in place, you inspect it, and then you own it. A little bit different story when it comes to multifamily. The things, same things have to happen, but it takes a different order for things to happen. First of all, you're never going to get into a multifamily to have a look until you have it under contract. So that you get it under contract based on the numbers. And you get the numbers from the realtor or whoever is selling the property. A lot of times it's the owner, because the owners, first of all, do not want people trying to traipse through their buildings and put a big for sale sign on their lawn. They want to make sure that they keep the tenants, and tenants start to get nervous if there's any kind of sale coming up. So a lot of times a transition will happen and nobody will even know until they get that notice under their door that says, hey, we took over ownership of this building and now you're going to make your checks and send your e-transfers to this address. And that's really important, because if you start making your tenants nervous and they move out, well, then you're left trying to sell and finance a property that has vacancy in it, and it doesn't work so well after that. Once you get it under contract, well, then you got 90 to 120 days to take ownership. The 90 days includes things like getting financing in place, getting the inspections. We always start with financing. Once we get it under contract, the contract goes to the mortgage broker and they start putting financing in place for us. We do a lot of CMHC financing, and there's definitely time frame there. So you got to get that into your lender as soon as possible and get them working on the financing for you, because lots of times there's delays even if you're on time. The big key with multifamily, I find, is generally it's not something you do on your own. Like there's some people who can maybe buy their first 12 unit or maybe 24 units with their own money and their own ability to get mortgages. But then at some point they run out of their own money. That's generally when people come to me, they can't get any more mortgages. And that with most people, they think about homes, the mortgages they can get. They do look at you differently when it's multifamily, but they still look at you. So what they're looking at, instead of looking at your income, can you support this building? They look at it first, can the building support itself? Is the income there to cover off all the expenses, including the mortgage? And if that's the case, then they'll look at you. But the other thing they're looking for is a net worth. So if you are buying $1 million building, the net worth of you and your investing partners has to be at least 250,000. So when people are brand new and just starting out, a lot of times they don't have that, and that's why it's important to have an investing partner to help qualify for the mortgage and that 250,000 net worth that they need to have in order for you to get the mortgage. And so where I feel that most people get stuck is they think they have to do it by themselves because they do their first house by themselves. But that's not the case. Many people will want to invest with you. Then and this is why I said, and why they want to do it now. If you look across the Canadian market and different pockets in the US, but particularly the Canadian market right now, there is crazy things happening in the markets like Toronto, Vancouver. The prices are really high. A lot of people have equity out of their homes, like lots of equity. They're able to pull out 400,000 or 500,000, and they want to do something with that money. And most of them, they have regular jobs that they have to go to on a day-to-day basis, don't have the time or maybe even the interest to learn about real estate investing. So that's where you can come in. You can help these people put that money to work because I always think leaving money in your home as is kind of like debt equity, like you could put it to work for you. But lots of people don't understand how that would work. Lots of people think it's high risk if they do that. I always think of it as, that's another asset. Now I have two assets working for me. And with multifamily, Robert Kiyosaki, one of my mentors, always says, you want to buy assets that somebody else will pay off for you. And that very much happens with your multifamily buildings and your single family homes too. But with multifamily, it's just that much bigger, that much more. If you're getting, 300 a door cash flow per door, and you got 12 doors, well, that makes it an exponential number. And, it takes you, couple months to close on a house. It takes you a few more months to close on a building, but the workload is very, very similar. A little bit more, but then you also have team members that will help you with it. So we're finding a lot of people would love to invest in real estate, but have never been educated on it. So your role would be educating people on why real estate. In a lot of cases, you guys that are on here, you understand the power of real estate and why you want to own it. I also think we're going to start going into inflationary times with all the money that the government's printed over this whole COVID fiasco. Don't get me started on that. So I think we're going to see some inflation, and in your real estate asset will keep you up with inflation as well, which is so very important. And, a lot of people only look at cash flow when they're looking at buying a building. But another big part of your investment is actually that mortgage pay down. And, with your own personal house, you don't really notice it unless you sell it. And then it's like, oh, yeah, I do have all that cash sitting there. But with multifamily, your tenants are paying off your mortgage for you. And that's like money in your pocket eventually. If you own 50% of that asset, well, 50% of that mortgage pay down comes to you. And it doesn't come to you today either, so you can't spend it. It's that's kind of your long-term planning. We haven't bought RSPs since we got into real estate because we understand that we'd rather put our money into an asset than put money into RSP that the government's going to tax the heck out of anyway. And at any point they decide they need more money, that's going to go up and up and up. And your asset has to be able to continue running, because sometimes people say, well, what's going to happen when the government needs money from our buildings? Well, if we can't finance them, we can't buy them. So unless there's people out there just paying straight cash, which doesn't happen very often, it doesn't work. You have to be able to finance that building. That's why right now we're seeing CMHC financing at such really great rates. I think the last rate that one of my students got, bought a brand new building in Edmonton, Alberta, 6 units, 1.5% interest, 40-year amortization. Well, that allows for the cash flow. And there's not going to be much for repairs and maintenance over the, the next 10 years for sure. Even though we do plan for it throughout, it makes such a difference in being able to finance your buildings when you're able to get really good returns like that. So like I said, I think now is a really good time to be thinking about getting into multifamily. And when we started, I still remember when we bought our first multifamily, I was sitting in front of a realtor telling him, yeah, our goal is to buy like another 10, 12 houses again this year. And we were already using investor capital in order to be able to scale and put the mortgages in our joint venture partner's name. And he said to me, Edna, well, why don't you buy an apartment building? And I said, oh, I'm not ready for that. I don't own enough houses. And I think that most people think like that. They think they need to have, more experience, more houses, more, cash. But in reality, you can start today, and you can start by using other people's cash. And instead of thinking of that as, because different people will come to me, well, I feel like I'm, begging for money. I want you to think about that as coming from a power position. You have the gold. You find yourself a really, really good deal and put it in front of the right investors. Your value to the deal is huge. And you just have to, first of all, understand that yourself, because a lot of people don't. They think, oh, it's just easy to find a deal. I could find deals all day long. But not everybody can. And not everybody has the interest in studying and studying the markets and studying the investment opportunities like you do. So you take that education that you've learned and you start educating people out there, and they will become your potential investors. Like I get people routinely reaching out to me nowadays and saying, well, what are you investing in now? I got some money. I'd like to do something with it. And, I'm getting to be quite a public figure. So a lot of people reach out to me and say, we'd like to invest with you. Well, you know what? We weren't there 13 years ago when we started. We were reaching out to many different people, but we found that as we were educating them on the power of real estate and the opportunity within real estate, and a lot of these people had seen that opportunity kind of because they'd seen the value of their house increase so much. When we started, it was 2007, but we had bought our newer house. It wasn't brand new in 2002 in Regina, Saskatchewan, paid $222,000 for it. And 5 years later, it was worth over $400,000. Well, that's where we got our first equity position to buy our first properties. And so when people see the value of their properties and their houses increase, they start thinking, oh, that makes sense. So a good conversation starter is, where have you seen your biggest net worth increase over the last 5 or 10 years, or even in some cases, 40 years? Because even if the markets haven't been crazy to give you a whole pile of appreciation, you got mortgage pay down. And that again adds up over a lot of years. But just to have that mortgage pay down, dead equity sitting there doesn't really do you anything. Like it's nice feeling to be able to say, oh, I have a house paid for, but it's not really putting your money to work for you. So once you understand about putting your money to work for you, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but once you teach people to understand about what they can do with that home equity line of credit, or the value of their business or their business line of credit, once you can teach them about what they can do with that, then those investors start to come with you. But they just don't naturally know that themselves. So that's why in this world, if you're looking at building up your own net worth in real estate, start thinking about how many other people you could help. Because just imagine if you could help 10 other people increase their net worth by $1 million each over the next 5 years, what can that do for you? I can't remember which motivational speaker said it, but there's that saying that if you help enough other people get their goals, well, you're just naturally going to get your goals. So if you start from that position, and start sharing what you learn with people, and don't be scared that they're going to take off and do what you're doing. They're not. 95% of the people would never put in the work and want to do what you're doing. They might eventually. I had a few investors over the years that started by investing with us and then decided they wanted to do it on their own. But many times they actually came back after and went, I didn't realize all the work that you had to do. So yeah, I think I'll just stick on the investor side, so the more that you can teach people, even what your role is when it comes to investing in real estate, that it's not a passive role for you either. You got to find the deal, you got to vet the deal, you got to analyze, you got to inspect, you got to get the financing in order. Like there's a list this long of all the things that you need to do. And when you start writing that out and putting that on paper, it starts also making you realize the value that you bring to the deal as well. And then if you're the active manager over time, there's also that is again another reason for people to invest with you, because they don't want to. A lot of people think or want to think that real estate's a passive income opportunity. Well, in our case, it's not. If you're just the investor and you just give us money, it's pretty passive. But even then, you got to kind of watch over it and make sure that you're staying on top of things. Even if you have property management, you can't just let them manage it, because they do not have the skin in the game like you do. So you have to oversee them. And so it never is really a passive income opportunity. I know when we first started, I remember saying, it took us, 18 months to get to $5,000 a month in passive income. But you know what? It was never really passive, because even though we were considered the money partner and weren't the active managing partner, there were still things to oversee and be part of. And that's on an ongoing basis. So that's how you earn your money and your value over the years. Jason, did you have any specific questions you'd like to ask me, or if you want the audience to open up and ask specific questions, or
you need to be doing basically as a multifamily investor?
I would say the first thing is, stop trying to think you have to go it alone. People think I got to learn how to do maintenance. I got to learn how to get the mortgage in place. I got to, learn everything. You don't. That's part of building your power team. Build your power team and then rely on those other people. I find that the biggest thing that slows people down growth wise is that need to do everything themselves.
No, that's a great point. Is you want to build a team around you so you can have more success, because you can't physically do everything yourself. You only have so many hours in a week yourself. Exactly. So you have to be able to leverage off other people's time so you can accomplish and them fill the roles that they're best at. You do what you're best at. And I think that's another thing, just understanding what are you best at? What are you best at? And what's your most highest return on time spending on an activity? For and spending what you like to do. Everything.
Yeah, what you like to do too as well, Jason, because not everybody likes to do everything. Like I don't like dealing with tenants and toilets. It was right from the start. I realized that, and I think that's what allowed us to grow, where some other people were held back because they were thinking, well, I'll save that $1,000 a month and I'll just manage it myself. Well, it's just not worth it, in the long run at all. So that's the biggest one I'd say, is trying to do it alone. And the second one is trying to do it without education. Like I've had people say, well, I'm just going to jump right in and learn how to swim. Well, you know what? You could make an awful lot of mistakes, especially when you're dealing with a larger deal. I mean, you buy a small little house and things don't work out exactly right. Well, it's not a big deal. But if you're buying a few $1 million building and things don't work out, well, that's a whole different ballgame. So you want to get yourself educated so you really understand the whole ins and outs of what could happen, and stay around like-minded people so that you have a resource. If anything does go wrong, or something's happening and you're not sure how to deal with it, or, different little challenges come up and you're not feeling like you're there by yourself, trying to do it all alone.
No, that's a great point too, is to stay connected with a resource of like-minded people that are looking to achieve the same goals you're looking to achieve, so you can have more success and a lot sooner.
Yeah.
Rather than trying to go it all by yourself, because it's a business. You need different parts. You need different people to do different things, especially when dealing with a multifamily building. If you're doing one of the larger units, like 100 or more, you need to have property management, you need to have maintenance, you need to have contractors, you need to have these different component pieces where you're not going to be able to do all that. Or you don't have the time, and they'll be exhausted and you'll burn out.
Yeah.
Rather than just building your team in that area.
Yeah.
And one of the things I think too is people sometimes are afraid to start outside the whole. Can you wholesale that property? Can you fix and flip that property? Can you hold it for? You got to know that too. But another factor right now is, as you probably know, what we're dealing with is the moratoriums in some states. I know you could talk a little bit about the moratoriums and some of the effect that's happened, just because some states you can't, because of COVID, you can't put renters out on the street if they're not paying, and you have to factor that in if you're buying a building now, the cash flow until we get back to normal,
Yeah.
at least.
Well, what we found for ourselves, Jason, is the most of the workers, like the working people, even if they were laid off, I mean, they got their benefit. I can't remember what it was called, but their check that to still allowed them help pay their rent. Our biggest challenge was actually social services people who had the rent paid, but the rent check was going to them, and they thought we were getting all these breaks, so didn't want to pay their rent, and we couldn't kick them out all at the same time. So that was a challenge for us. In our province, that has been lifted now as of August, but it still takes time, and you want to work with the people. You don't want to put them out on the street, but when they haven't paid you for 6 months, and full well they've actually got their check to pay you, you have a hard time feeling sorry for them.
No, I totally understand that. If they're intentionally not doing that, and that they just kind of gaming the system because of what is going on with the moratoriums. Like, for example, Nevada extended the moratorium to the end of March 31st.
Yeah.
Some states, like the federal moratorium, I believe, is till the end of this month. But expiring soon. But some states went beyond that, went into March, and the federal could easily extend well into March and beyond. I wouldn't be surprised if that gets extended as well. It's just a fact that you have to consider when you're buying an asset that's in play, and because it can throw off your cash flow. If you have if you're budgeting for 10% vacancy, or 20% vacancy, or 30% if it's a reposition, and you have all of a sudden you're not getting 70% of your cash flow on a big building, well, that's going to make a huge difference, because the bank's not giving the landlords any breaks on paying their mortgages.
Yeah, anymore. They did at the beginning, but they're stepping back a bit on that. But the last thing I'd say for point number 3 is a lot of people have to wrap their mindset around dealing with other people's money and dealing with larger dollar amounts, because a lot of people are fearful when it comes to, I could buy a little house, 200,000, 400,000, no big deal. But to think about getting into $1 or $2 or $4 million building scares the heck out of them. And, that's just a mindset shift, it's just saying, it's just adding a zero at the end, and to think about that. But there's some steps that you can go through to get you used to doing that kind of, thought process. And that's something else that I think people have to go through. I know we had to go through it at the beginning when we were told, well, why don't you just get in apartment buildings? Well, we couldn't even think about it yet. So again, being around like-minded people, or people that talk about it, make it happen a lot quicker. Because when you're around people that are buying multifamily all the time, then it's no longer an issue. It's just like, oh, Joe bought his property last week. How come I don't have one under contract? You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. It's mindset is so important, because if you shift your mindset in certain areas, it'll help you shift your life in an area, and you'll tackle problems at different areas. So it's important for you to associate with people at higher mindset, because they can help you level up where other people, and if you have people that are trying to suck you down, you may have to cut some of those people out of your life so you can level up. And then later on in life, if you want to help them or whatever, fine. But mindset's such a big thing. The group you hang around with is going to affect, who you are and what you become. And you have to be really mindful of who you let in with that,
That is so true. Because, especially in the everyday world, they're not taught to think like that. They're taught to, self-preserve and don't get out of your comfort zone. And, who are you to think that you could own a multifamily building? Like, I've had people say, well, I've had people say to me, like, who do you think you are? What, really? You want to own a 2, 3, 4? Do you know all the problems you could have? And they just go right down in that negative rabbit hole. Well, I always like to think, well, what if? what if, you know, if other people are doing good at it, well, I could just learn how to do it too. And I think that's just something that people have to get comfortable with, taking the chance and making it happen.
Yeah, I know. It's a growth. Everyone has a different growth trajectory. And so some people grow faster than others. Some people take longer. Some people don't want to grow. It really depends on that person and that environment you're in. And you got to be so careful. Like I said, it's who you associate, who you hang out with. Certain people you may have to get rid of out of your life just because they try to drag you down into their belief system. If they see you up leveling,
Yeah.
and they may be your friends, but maybe you're growing as a person. So the people you were hanging out with 3 or 4 years ago are no longer good for you to be hanging out with now.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and that's where you got to be really cognizant of who you're around and what your environment is, and make sure you set that up for yourself so you can have as much success as you want.
Yeah.
Make sure that you're right with the right people, the right mentors, the right people with the right mindset. Limit the people that don't have the right mindset, excommunicate them out. I know it sounds a little harsh, but it'll help your growth, and it'll get rid of some toxic people that may be holding you back from taking the next steps and really growing as a person and evolving and changing.
Yeah. And I always like to give the piece of advice, you know, don't take advice from people who haven't done what you want to do. Because, you know, if it's your well-meaning uncle, yes, he loves you to pieces, but if he doesn't own any rental property, why are you asking him if you should buy some? Because of course the answer is going to be no, right? Are you crazy? What's wrong with you? You know, so yeah, you really gotta, you know, in order to level up, you got to go to people who are leveling up and doing what you want to do. I think that's another really key component to success.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a very key point to success. Let me check the chat here, see if there's any questions.
Sure.
Does anybody have any questions for Edna Keep? Anything that she can answer for you guys? I mean, this is a great chance. Okay, I just saw someone in the chat. Speaking truth to power. You said speaking truth to power. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think the main thing is you got to look at. You always want to stay focused on what your goals and what you're trying to accomplish, and your team is trying to accomplish. And I think that's most important, focusing on what you need to do. I mean, surrounding yourself with really good people and the right people and things along that line are very important too. Not getting too caught up in like dramas that other people may be having going on. Just get that stuff out of your way, because you don't want that sucking in your, you know, your energy from how you show up on a daily basis and how you can be productive and do what you need to do. Sorry about that. I'm gonna have to go.
Yeah.
So yeah, so does anyone have any questions for Edna Keep? I want to open this up. If you guys have any questions for Edna Keep here before I bring on our next speaker, Brad Blazer. So does anyone have any questions? This is a great chance to take some opportunity to ask Edna a question. And if anyone has any questions, please put them in the chat. Or, okay, I don't see anything in the chat. Q&A, I don't see anything right now. Is there anything else you would like to add, Edna?
Just, you know, if you're looking to get into multifamily and you want some support, just reach out to me. I do lots of free stuff online. And of course, I do have a course if people want to take it to the next level.
Why don't you put your contact information in the chat, Edna, so people can reach out to you directly. We'll also provide that as well. But if you can put that in the chat, that'd be great.
Okay, sure. Oh, if someone said do code GP, I don't know what you mean by code GP, like general partner with others?
Code G, okay. Probably it would mean, I don't see it, but code GP. Well, that's general partner. Yeah, it could be partnerships. Yeah.
Yeah, we do actually. Yeah, we just bought or got under contract 178 units in Memphis, Tennessee, and that's with a partnership. Yeah, I actually have two partners. One that is more the on the ground, find the deal, renovate, because we got them at 21.6 a door. So there's definitely renovations that have to happen. And then another partner who's on the same side as I am, which is the capital raise. So yeah, we do.
No, that's awesome. So yeah, put your information in chat, Edna, if you already did that. So let me check.
Oh, you know what?
I didn't see it. It's all panelists.
That's because it went straight to instead to everyone. So I'll do it again, but I'll let you.
Yeah, put it to everyone. Make sure that they have it. Just let me check that before. I want to make sure people can reach out and get a hold of you, Edna, and everything along that line.
I just put my website address on there, and that's probably the best place to start.
Okay, perfect. Well, I want to thank so much, Edna Keep, for joining us here at the High Performance SaaS Summit. Talk about how you can get started in multifamily real estate investment. Thank you so much, Edna, for joining us.
My
Have a
pleasure,
wonderful day.
Jason. Okay, you too. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Next,